Hi, everyone. My name is Katie Wright. I'm the director of the VEDS movement, which is a division of the Marfan Foundation. And I also have Vascular Ehlers-Danlos Syndrome, or VEDS. Today, I'm going to talk about what my toolbox looks like with VEDS and how you can build yours. Just a disclosure before I start this presentation, I do direct the VEDS movement, which is a division of the Marfan Foundation. So I am employed by the Marfan Foundation, and a lot of the resources in here are through the VEDS movement. But I just want to let you know that before we get started. So when I think about my toolbox for VEDS, there's a lot of things like racing through my mind. And there's really a lot of things to know when you have VEDS. But primarily, I'm going to talk today about where I look for information, what I think about emergency preparedness, how you could possibly connect with others and why that's important, and also about resources to use for mental health. I think all of these are really important things, and while there's a lot of other things that could go into your toolbox, these are the top 4 that I really think about when I'm kind of planning my life with VEDS. So first, I'm going to talk about where I look for information. There is a lot of information out there. The important thing to know is that not all of it is reliable. And so I really try to look for reliable information. And I do that through a few of these things on the screen here. So a knowledgeable care team. That's a really, really big one. If you can set up a care team in your local area and you have somebody that you can trust, that's a really good resource for information, especially if you can get an expert that isn't, that is on your care team, even if they aren't local, that can help advise your local care team. That can give you a lot more trust in that. And I'll have a slide in a second with a little bit more about this, or another resource to get this designed. But that's a really good place for information if you do have a knowledgeable care team. I also look for webinars with the experts. These are available through places like the Ehlers-Danlos Society, the VEDS movement, the Marfan Foundation. These are really good resources to help kind of guide your care team, I think, and kind of guide you when you're trying to look for answers that aren't readily available for your own health. And I think what's important here with the webinars is remembering that, they're not going to be very specific to you. If you have a specific medical problem that you're dealing with, it might just help, put the light bulb on kind of shine some light on what you might be dealing with. But that's an important resource for you and your care team. I also look for information at conferences through reliable sources like the Ehlers-Danlos Society, the one you're here at now, the VEDS movement, the Marfan Foundation. That was a conference a couple weeks ago. And I know the Annabelle's Challenge in the UK also has like these patient conferences. So really, reliable sources, not like a web page that was on page 10 of Google that you found on a search. Like those are not really reliable sources of information. I also think about, research papers, like published research papers, but even those can be confusing, and those are best to kind of give to your doctors and let them kind of sort out what it means for you or what it could mean for you. All right, so when I'm talking about webinars, there are a lot of webinars now available for VEDS, which I think was not historically the case. This has really blossomed over the last few years, and these webinars have been provided by either the Ehlers-Danlos Society, the VEDS movement, or the Marfan Foundation. And on the right-hand side over here, I just took some snippets on my computer of just some of them that are out there, but there are a lot of webinars available now for VEDS, and I think it's really amazing that we're able to find these resources and provide these resources. And that's a great tool for getting information about VEDS. I'm going to highlight a specific webinar here that we did through the VEDS movement about creating a care team for VEDS. When we talk about a care team, really there's so many things that could go into a care team depending on your own situation. But we did a webinar with Dr. Peter Byers back in March of 2021. About creating a care team for VEDS. And this is also a really good resource if you're new to this or trying to figure out how to navigate the medical system. It can be very complicated, and there is an ideal, ideal situation for who would be on your care team and how to do it. It doesn't always work out, but it is a great resource to just try to guide you in this confusing time. And I encourage you to check that out at thevedsmovement.org. The VEDS movement also has a help and resource center that is staffed by a registered nurse. Her name is Jan Lynch. And this is another good place for information. If you're having trouble, kind of getting your question answered, or you're having trouble finding a medical provider, this is a great kind of resource for you. She knows the expert. She can help try to guide you and where to go next, and really great. I know the Ehlers-Danlos Society also has something similar. They have a helpline that can also be reached either by phone or online, and that's on their website. I don't have a link to it here, but what's important is that there are resources here to help you get information that you need. And it's important to use them. It's a great thing to have in your toolbox, and just know that it's there if you're having a problem. And, it's something I keep in my toolbox that I can access if I need to. I'm also going to talk about emergency preparedness resources now. Anybody who knows me knows that this has been something I have been kind of promoting and harping on for a few years now, and I think it's really important. So when I think about emergency preparedness for VEDS, I think about, what am I going to do if I have an emergency? Where am I going to go? How do I know that the providers there are going to know about VEDS? How am I going to communicate information to them if I'm not able to do so at the time with my voice? And so these are things that go into emergency preparedness. There is an emergency preparedness kit and a wallet card now at thevedsmovement.org. And I've put the link here on the screen. It's thevedsmovement.org/emergency preparedness kit. This is specific for vascular Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And it has a lot of information in there, including a letter to the emergency department. It's got a fact sheet for emergency medical technicians or EMTs and paramedics. It's got the wallet card in there. It's got a whole guide to help you prepare your records and everything that you might need in an emergency, and just have it there so you don't have to worry about it anymore. And I think that's one of the things that I believe in. I really believe in, and I'm going to just keep repeating myself here, but if you have an emergency and you can't communicate to somebody else what's going on, that's a problem. And for me, if I have done everything I possibly can to prepare for an emergency ahead of time and know that all of the pieces are in place, I know what I'm going to do if I have one, I know how they're going to learn about VEDS if I can't communicate, that puts my mind at ease. And I'm hopeful that it will do the same for you. I've also put a care team here on this list of emergency preparedness resources. A care team, while it's there for regular care, a care team can be really important as well in an emergency. So if you have local providers that are familiar with you, then in an emergency, ideally, you can contact one of them and let them know, hey, I'm going to the emergency room. This is what's going on. I might need you to call the emergency room and let them know about VEDS. And a lot of times, if they're local in your area with that emergency room, a lot of times they are, they're already in connection with that emergency room and can do that a lot of the time. So I've put care team here because I think that is such an important piece of emergency preparedness, just having a care team that knows about you ahead of time and can advocate for you in an emergency. I also put a medical alert bracelet. We're talking about how would they know what you have if you can't communicate to them what's going on in an emergency? By them, I mean, the ambulance that shows up, or the EMTs or the paramedics. If you're wearing a bracelet, they're trained to look for that. And in the emergency preparedness kit, we do have kind of a list of what you should have on your bracelet. And on the next slide here, I just have some snippets of the emergency preparedness resources I was just talking about. So on the left-hand side is a little picture of the emergency wallet card that is in the emergency preparedness kit that we talked about on the last slide. This folds into the size of a business card, and so it fits straight into your wallet, and this can be a really good resource. We designed this in collaboration with the VEDS Collaborative. And I have it in my wallet. I should have brought it here to show you, but it's cool. I have it just, in my wallet, visible from the outside where the driver's license usually is. And that makes me feel comfortable. There's also like a little, in the middle of this, there's a snippet of what an example of a medical alert bracelet, what that could look like. Yours might look much different. Mine is, a road ID, and I really like that because I can adjust it to the size of my wrist. And that's what works for me. The important thing is to find a medical alert bracelet that works for you and that you're comfortable with. On the right-hand side here, I have a snippet of the emergency preparedness kit, like front page. It's really just decorative, but it is a pretty robust preparedness kit that you can download for free on our website at thevedsmovement.org. And really, I encourage you, when you're thinking about emergency preparedness, to do what you're comfortable with. I feel more comfortable by having this stuff just ready, available, visible from the outside, but there's lots of like medical alerts that are just a little bit more discreet than mine, and really just do what's comfortable for you. But I really do advocate for having these resources ready ahead of time so that you're not worried about it when an emergency actually happens. You can just go on with your day and not worry day to day about what you're going to do because you've already planned for it. And next, I'm going to talk about connections. This is something that has really grown over the last few years as we've all become more connected online and as a community as a whole, as the VEDS community. This is, when I was first diagnosed in 2017, I really didn't know anybody with VEDS. I met somebody here and there afterwards. I got into a Facebook group, but once I started really connecting with others, my whole outlook kind of changed. And I think it's a really important piece to have in your toolkit, to not feel like you have to go through this alone. There are multiple ways to connect now, and it's 2021. So, things have really grown over the last several years. There's local events that you can go to through the Marfan Foundation, like Walk for Victory, or symposiums. There's online events like this conference you're in now, like the Marfan Foundation conference that was just a couple weeks ago in July 2021. There are Facebook groups online. There's like several hundred people now in these VEDS Facebook groups from all over the place, all over the world. And there are ways to connect with others. At the VEDS Movement, we also have what's called a VEDS Friendly Connection Program that can connect you one-on-one with somebody else if you would like to do that instead of connect in a group if you're just not comfortable yet. But the important thing to take away from this is that connection can be really helpful as you're trying to kind of cope with this and live life with this. It's a big thing to carry, and connecting with others that also carry that weight can be a really freeing experience. And I think it's really important. It's in my toolkit. It's something I consider probably one of the most important things in my toolkit. And there are other ways to connect with others as well. This kind of bleeds right into mental health resources. So I've put the support groups on this slide. There are multiple support groups. I'm going to put them on the next slide here, but this goes right back into connecting with others who, experience the same kind of issues with VEDS that you do. With the support groups, sometimes you might feel like you want to help support other people, and sometimes you might feel like you need the support yourself. But the reason that these support groups can be so helpful is because it's a group of people with similar backgrounds that are struggling with similar things that are there to help each other through it. And it goes right back into this feeling of not having to do it alone. I've also put a mental health professional on this in my toolkit. I have a mental health professional. She's a mental health counselor. I see her probably every couple of weeks. She does telemedicine visits now, which is fantastic. And I really consider her part of my care team, but she's in my toolbox for mental health resources. There are times with VEDS that I don't have much anxiety at all. There are days and weeks that go by that I'm doing fine. And then something might happen and I might be totally devastated or just down about my condition, and I am anxious and I need somebody to talk to. And I have friends and family, but sometimes they don't know how to listen or don't know how to relate. And a mental health professional can be really key in just helping you cope with this. This is a heavy diagnosis to carry. And again, it's really, I think mental health is really important, and you don't have to carry it alone, whether you go to a support group or whether you go to a mental health professional. I think both are really important pieces in a toolkit, and your mental health is so important as well as your physical health. So for support groups, I think this is my last major slide here, but there are multiple support groups through the VEDS movement. There's a group for people with VEDS, there's a group for parents, partners and spouses, people who have lost people, including community, if you're struggling with the loss of a community member, even if you didn't know them. There's a group for people who are anxious about getting diagnosed, or they're just figuring out everything and they're newly diagnosed. There's a group for kids. It's not really a support group, it's more like a hangout for the kids, but there are lots of groups. There are also groups through the Ehlers-Danlos Society for similar things, right? There's the VEDS parents group, there's a VEDS group for people with VEDS, and more that include people with all types of EDS. And I've put both of these on the slides here because I think they're both really important. And when we design these, like the VEDS Connect group is at a different time than Let's Chat VEDS. It's at a different time of the month too. So if you want to go to both, it kind of can get you through the month, every 2 weeks there's something for you to go to. And I think you should use these as much as you need to, and use whatever's available. That's the great thing about having both the VEDS movement and the Ehlers-Danlos Society, is that together, we can provide more support for people, and that's important. So that's it. That's all I have, and I'll be happy to take questions in a Q&A, in the live Q&A, but really just thank you. Thank you for being here and for seeking more information about VEDS, and you're not in this alone.